At the center of the universe, at the border between the light and the dark, stands Castle Grayskull. For countless ages, the heroes of Grayskull have defended the universe against the forces of evil. Walk through the Hall of Living Pictures and learn the history and mystery of the Masters of the Universe. Dive deep into the mythology of Eternia, Etheria, and more. For those who know the stories of Grayskull will come the power. The power to be supreme. The power to be all-knowing. The power to be Legends of Grayskull.
Hello everybody and welcome to episode 15 and a half of Legends of Grayskull, the fan podcast where we discuss the history, the mystery, the magic and mythology of He-Man, She-Ra, Eternia, Etheria, Primus, Nordor, New Adventures, Old Adventures, Eternia, Etheria, the Evil Horde, the Wicked Snakeman, anything and everything with that He-Man, She-Ra, Princess of Power, Masters of the Universe, that Mattel logo on the bottom. I'm Matthew Duch. I'm here with Sean Scavarna. Sean, how are we doing today?
I'm working out, apparently. I'm turning the intro now is turning not from me just being excited to do it. It's more like, oh god, it's a John Travolta video gone wrong. But
let's get physical.
Let's get physical. Yes, yeah. I'm good. I'm excited because tonight is going to be a fun night. So
it will. We got an exciting record to talk about tonight that Sean's been waiting for. It ended up being 3 weeks you had to wait.
Yeah. So. I had to wait 3 weeks.
So do we have any news? My mind's blank. How about yours?
News-wise, the one thing that we were just talking about this, and I'm going to throw it out there because it's really nice.
Is out there.
We got another review, and that was really sweet. And
better than a 2-star.
Oh, it's much better than a 2-star. So our average is 4.5 out of 5 on iTunes as of tonight, which is awesome. And because there was a written review, we know it was a certain Penny Dreadful who wanted to share with us this time. And we want to say thank you very much, Danielle Galera, for Penny Dreadful. And, we appreciate all of the feedback that you've been giving us. And, it's only help. That's awesome. So we appreciate you taking the time to do that.
Yes, we appreciate all you listeners, especially those that figure out how to do the reviews.
Yes.
And that actually jogged my memory because she just dropped another of the Masters of the Universe Classics wish list videos today, which she's been churning those out a lot. Today was the Meteorbs with special guest host on there, Joe Amato. So I'll drop a link down below. She's Penny Dreadful the 13th over on YouTube, and she's done a whole series showing Mattel how wrong they are for putting classics on a hiatus.
I think you and I are also in that canon with her, in that gang with her, because classics is just, why would you do that? It's funny. Like today, my son was down here in the basement with me for a bit. He's getting really hardcore into his Ninja Turtles, but when he sees all the classics on my shelves, he goes, Daddy, I want to show you who you have. So I have to hold him, and he goes through and he'll name all the characters, and there's only 2 he didn't recognize. He didn't know Optic, and he didn't know Evil Seed because it was 2000X Evil Seed. But he went through and named them all, and he wants to name all the other ones. It's like, I
like it.
It makes me happy. It makes me proud that I'm sharing something that excites him because he just gets so excited. But there's something about this, the classics. And I know, people, the fans out there that are like, we don't love it just for classics. We love it because it's the Masters brand and it's the Masters, the actual overall Masters. But if it wasn't for classics, I honestly don't know if I'd be as passionate or involved in this fan base, because those really just sunk in. This is what this is supposed to be. And Yeah, I'm not thrilled. I'm right there with you, Danielle. I do not like the Mattel thought this was a great time to hibernate a line that was amazing,
Yep.
and it still is amazing. So.
And it could have kept going. They could have just taken it, quarterly, even twice a year. Just do like 4 figures, 8 figures a year, whatever. Crowdfund, kickstart, however they want to do it,
Mm-hmm.
so that everything. Hasbro, they've been turning out a lot of that kind of collector stuff right now with the Hasbro Pulse. Mattel easily could have switched to that format, even if they didn't want Super 7 doing that anymore, where they throw it out there, and if it meets its goal, it goes into production. If it doesn't, oh well. And at least that shows you're putting it literally in the hands of the fans at that point, more so even than the Matty Collector days, to show, hey, do you really want this? If so, here you go. And then they can go,
That, not going down a huge rabbit hole with this, but the one thing that I want to say about how it feels right now to be a fan is it's like, 2000X classics. There was this feeling of just all encompassing, hey, come along for the ride and enjoy this. Like when we loved He-Man when we were kids, when it ended and we got New Adventures, it didn't work. So it's like 2000X was like a welcome home. We know why you love this stuff, and here's a reimagining that takes it to another level. Classics was kind of we'll meet you right in the middle, and all the stuff that you loved from whichever version you loved, here it is, and we're going to make the best version of it possible. And the way that Mattel feels right now to me is they're taking back all of our toys, and they want to play with them the way they want to play with them versus including the people that loved all the different incarnations in a sense. And I don't mean that in like they're jerks way, but I just kind of feel left out right now for that reason. Yeah. So we'll see what happens with this Origins deal. I don't know.
But that's what I was going to say. I'm hoping that there's going to be something for us down the road. I will say to commend them that it is kind of refreshing right now because they are putting out so many different things, which for a long time Mattel was stoutly against that. They were it's all classics, or it's all 2000X, or it's all this. And I mean, so now we got 2 cartoons, the live action movies supposedly. DC's still churning out their stuff at least regularly, if not frequently. You got the mini masters coming back out. You got the mega constructs. You got the golden books that were more filmation-y. Like, I don't know. It's just it's nice that they're putting something out there for everybody kind of right now. Like, they're throwing all these different things at the wall finally and saying, let's see what sticks. But it's like, okay, so why couldn't we have had a classics in there too? Like, you're doing all that, but classics is the one thing you're like, no.
Yeah.
So hopefully they'll realize their mistake once Origins kind of gets its footing, and then hopefully they'll realize, like, hey, we can still do the adult collector too. Because I will not go. I mean, I already bought Skeletor, as a hypocrite there. I'm sure my kids will get me to pick up some stuff. Like you said, like if you got Skeletor, you kind of have to have He-Man, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
But I will never go into a line like I have with classics, and that's not even saying I don't even have a lot of classics comparatively to how many they produced. But just like I don't have the energy for it, and I don't have the desire to do it. Like I will never have as many Origins as I have classics. I can't see any line coming out where I even come close to the amount of characters that I picked up.
Yeah, so. I'm the same way, and it's like we live in an age where we have the Origins line about to hit, the Imaginext, the potential of Imaginext. I heard there was a rumor that could be another thing. The little people.
Fisher Price, yes, Fisher Price announced that they've got a set coming out.
Yeah, and that's just got unveiled today, actually. I saw some images just tonight.
They actually released the images?
You said about having other things for news, and unfortunately I didn't see that until like literally 10 minutes ago or whatever.
Yeah, before it was just like a text listing. I had not seen actual images myself yet.
Yeah, it was just this little image. It had the version of He-Man, Man-at-Arms, Skeletor, and Beast-Man on it. And it's like the little people. It's like you'd expect out of that, really, but it's just here's Masters of the Universe guys. But it's a weird thing too for me of like, this stuff. I feel like they're triggering all this stuff, but there's an element of like, but how did it take them 30 plus years to get to this point where it should have been, like stuff maybe that would have been around when we were kids and growing up, having different iterations and all that. So I don't know. It's like Mattel. I feel like I almost want to talk to them and go, what's up with this? I mean, no offense to them and all that stuff, but I feel like Hasbro is way more, they're entrenched in whatever their brand is, and they keep trying to do something new and trying to keep it out there. And I feel like Mattel, it's like, if it's not Barbie or Hot Wheels, we don't know if we want to handle this way or not. And it's like, no, this is still good stuff. I mean, my son, he lights up seeing this stuff. Obviously, there's something to it, and I was the same way. I wouldn't be here right now talking to you if I didn't care about it from when I was a kid. So
absolutely. Now,
but anyway,
real quick note though, you said your son's getting into Turtles. Will you be picking up any of the Super 7 classics, basically Turtles?
I unfortunately, through finances, I was not able to jump in on that. And on top of that, with him being 3, he wants to get into my NECA, the quarter scale big movie turtles, the ones that are like a foot and a half. And every day, Daddy, can I hold those? I'm like, no. I'm like, with how much money Daddy put into just this shelf, no, because I'm not getting a new one if you drop it by accident, because I know how he gets. And if you get him mad and he's holding something, you might as well figure that's just dead to rights by that point. So no, I have not been able to get into that, but I do have figures that he loves to play with, and every day we have to have Shredder versus the Turtles down here in the basement, and I give his Turtles some crap, but then at the end of it I let Michelangelo or Raphael kick my butt. So
I like it.
And I'm still afraid of him messing with the classics. I don't have it in me to go there yet either with the price tag on some of those, but we play with the vintage ones. I got a couple vintage that he loves to play with. So
there you go. All right, so that was the long-winded way of saying check out Penny Dreadful's videos on YouTube. So
yes,
she got some good ones. Penny, I'm still waiting to see the one on McComb and and Malik, the Wizard of Stone Mountain. So I'm gonna be disappointed if they don't get on the list soon, and we'll just leave it at that. That's a good question. Real quick. Okay, so I just did my McComb and Malik are the two I feel that hasn't really been done yet. Off the top of your head, what are a couple figures you'd really still want to see in classics that haven't really been talked about yet?
Oh, right off the top of my head, easily 2000X Prince Adam. I really want a 2000X Prince Adam. That one, that one for me is like, I get chills even thinking. I want him to be. I don't want the classics buck. I want them to have like the slimmer buck on them and everything. But that would make my day, just having him. And a 2-pack that I would love if they could do is Tuvar and Badra. I really would love to see them. And then one other honorable mention, and then I promise I'll shut up, is I love a 2000X, because you can make a 2000X He-Man. Where's a 2000X Skeletor? I feel like I'm incomplete without that guy right there next to He-Man on the shelf.
You can't make him. He needs to be a little slimmer. You can't use that regular buck. He's got to have a little more emaciated buck. So
yeah. And more detailing on his boots and some of that, because the boots are very 2000X. And since they did Snake Armor He-Man, it's like, I know it can be done. I would love to see that. A lot of the other ones I feel work for 2000X, but that one in particular is like, he's his own thing. Yep. I really would love that.
I agree with all of those. Those are great options. And Danielle shunned 2000 Prince Adam when she did her 2000. She did a whole video on 2000X variant, and she completely left Adam out of there.
I think I remember that, and I was like, I'd actually throw it out there as you really need a Prince Adam, because Adam the Filmation version.
I think we both mentioned it on that video now that I'm thinking back on it.
And I'm trying to think, like, I mean, there's other ones, I'm sure, even from the original. I mean, they did the original line. So I really can't say anything from the original line where it's like, oh, but even like not going 2000X, the Masks of Power Demons are ones that I would still love because the mini comics, that Glorm from the mini comic or whatever, the big guy He-Man fought in the Ram Man issue, you know, stuff like that. I would love that too. So
yeah, I mean, I could go all day. Negator, the Game Master, the Nerbs, like we ain't got a long enough show for that. But
Dragoon.
So yes, once again, thank you, Danielle, for that wonderful rating. Even though you shunned 2000X Prince Adam,
we still love you. Don't worry.
And we will understand if for some reason this episode has a 1-star review from Penny Dreadful. So,
yeah, she'll go back on and change a review after we release this. She'll be like, okay, 1 star. You know,
1.
That'll
that's
be the end
it.
of that.
We're done.
All
right. Let's jump into a record. Masters Universe, 1983, Kid Stuff Records. And I actually did find out, thanks to another wonderful member of our community, Joe Amato, that this was also released on a cassette tape. I did not know that. It was released as a record. It was released as 2 records. It was this one here, and then there was the one where it was like the open packaging because the record itself had the picture of He-Man and Skeletor on it. And then there was a cassette tape as well. And he actually has the cassette tape, so
nice.
I feel confident saying that. But there was still never a book produced with this, which astounds me because this whole second part especially is just one big adventure. So.
See, that's the thing. I love that it isn't a book. This is one of those times, like when I was in my previous job, I found a whole lot of old radio shows, and I used to love listening to them during my work day. And I'd just be sitting there, and I'd zone out listening to those, and I'd be painting the pictures in my head of what's happening. And this record is such a case in point, especially as a kid. Like, it interested. If you had an interest in Masters and you sat and listened to this, there's no way you weren't sitting there with a big grin on your face and just your head is coming up with these visuals. Yeah. And it's just such. They give it such a lush and verbose narrative.
Absolutely.
But and not here we go again. I'm going on a tangent. But when you listen to this record, and you hear the language that's being used, the writer didn't talk down to kids. The writer actually spoke at our level, and I'm not even as good with English compared to the way that this is written. And I'm not trying to be that guy, but like I didn't have the new mini comic, but you bought Skeletor for that. And when I see what they did there, but then I listened to what is here, it's like they treated us so differently when we were kids compared to how they're treating kids now. That's all I can say about that.
Because they weren't writing for kids. That's the thing. They were writing. They're writing for themselves. All these guys, especially the greats that we associate with this brand and all the different series, the best guys were the ones that were just like, I'm going to write a story. And I'm going to keep it family friendly. But that doesn't mean like fart jokes and mommy, daddy, like that, whiny kids. You know, you can be, and I think our show is another thing like that. Like, we keep our show family friendly. I think we've had a few slip ups here and there, but nothing big. But that doesn't mean we don't tackle mature topics and talk about mature things. It's like that's what people don't seem to understand nowadays. Is you can do both. You can write a story that you're gonna like, and it can still be family friendly. And that's what they did here. That's what they did back in the days. That's what Filmation did. And that makes the difference. And keeping the Earth vernacular out of it. Once again here, all this early stuff does it. You will never hear a mom. You will never hear a dad. You'll always hear mother and father. And that. I know that's not even actually in this at all, because we don't meet the king and queen, as far as I recall, anywhere in here.
Nope.
But still, that's the best. That's just the example that pops to mind. It's like everything is that kind of formal, dialogue. It's not old English with a lot of ye's and yas and everything, but it's still a little more formal. It makes them a little more otherworldly, you know.
Yeah.
So, and it's
Yeah.
a
Well,
great tone.
I appreciate it so much listening to this and just going like, when I was a kid, my parents didn't talk down to me. They talked to me like I was just on
Right.
par with them with the language they used. And when I listen to this, and when I go to the old the old mini comics were paragraphs worth of information with one image from Alfredo Alcala right there, and it's like, those never made me feel stupid. They made my imagination just go wild.
Right.
And I'm just like, that's part of why this brand works. And that's unfortunately, like, I don't know the people handling it now. I feel like they're scared of that. I feel like there's like we don't want to push it too far because we want the kids involved. And it's like, well, when I was a kid, I loved the stuff that would push that, because that made me feel like, hey, this is something that is just out of my age group, and I want to know more about this. And my daughter and my son are the same way. If it might not be their age, but that makes them more interested in it. So, like that's definitely on my review of this. It's such a huge point of, this never talks down. It goes for the gold of, here is everything in detail of what you need to imagine to make the story work. And it's awesome. So, there you go.
I remember I would look up words in the dictionary. Like if I was reading and I came across words I didn't know, and like my parents weren't around to ask, I would actually go and look up words in the dictionary just to be like, well, what's this mean? Because same thing I did. You didn't have to talk down to me. You give me a word I don't know, I'm gonna go find out what it means. So. So once again here, I'm not going to go into big backstory. If you guys want to find out what happened on side 1, you should have watched our episode 14 and a half. There's just no excuse for not watching it. So if you want to know what happened on side 1, go watch 14 and a half. The one thing I will say, though, is I was doing a little bit of digging, mainly trying to figure out who does the voices and stuff, because this record, there's not a lot of information out there. I've not come across a full, even a partial cast list. The only name I could find with it is that John Braden, and he wrote and produced it. And I think I read somewhere that he possibly narrated it too. Don't quote me on that part though. But he did write and produce it, and he actually passed away in 1987, so he not and he was already older. He was older. I wish I'd kept that.
Well,
I think he was in his like 60s already, 60s or 70s when he did this. So, but yeah, I was trying to track down just any link I could find, and unfortunately, that was another dead end, and It's disappointing because I would have loved to talk to him about the process of this and where exactly it fits in, because obviously it takes from the Halperin Bible, but still not pure formation, but it's still not quite DC miniseries, so it's another one of those, this kind of 83 time frame when you got everyone just kind of coming up with their own thing here. Well,
based on the tone of the narrator, it wouldn't surprise me if that was him if he was an older man, because it really does. I said it last episode, and I mean, he really does sound like he's an amalgam of Stan Lee meets Vincent Price, and he's got that like cured tone to his voice to make it like it made me, every time I heard this when I was a kid, it made me think of like, here's this grandpa that's sitting by a fire, and he wants to tell you the story about the old days, and so it might, I don't know, maybe that really was him then, if you're saying he was an older man.
I'm giving it to him, and if anyone can prove me wrong, if anyone can prove me wrong, please do, because I've been, and I'm going to continue to look, because this has kind of piqued my interest here. I'd really love to, because I think if you uncover this, you can uncover some of those other tapes too, because a lot of it was very similar going on here. So I have to believe that kids stuff had like a central, even if they weren't exclusively kids stuff, they probably did other stuff too, but I think there was probably at least a central cast of players And I'd love for these guys to get credited. And if I find anything, and I probably should go that route too. I probably should look into some of the Thief of Castle Grayskull, and some of the other books that they did records for at this time.
Sure.
But that's a tale for another day. So let's go ahead and jump on in here.
Let's do it.
It is dawn on Eternia. As the morning sun creeps up above the craggy, mystic mountains, it spills its warm, life-giving light onto the dark and foggy valleys below. Small, furry creatures stir in their holes. High in the pine trees, great birds stretch their stiff, feathered wings, while other birds, night predators, return home to their lairs in caves and hollow trees. Even the myriad strange plants that line the forest floor respond to the sun in a ballet of movement too slow to be seen by any eye. They unfurl tender new leaves and twist their faces toward the warmth of the rising sun. But this morning, the peace and tranquility of the forest is shattered by a strange intruder. It is He-Man and Battle Cat. All through the long night, they have raced on toward Castle Grayskull, determined to reach the castle before Skeletor can begin his attempt to enter the fortress. Battle Cat is fast as the wind, but can they reach the castle in time?
And I can see here again why you thought that theme was going to be like the Filmation theme when the show premiered, because here again, He-Man gets on Battle Cat. It goes from they keep going back to that peaceful do 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 do, and then once they understand it goes to the Sunny and Cher again. So
honestly, it's still a cool. It is very early 80s. I'm not gonna lie. It's very 70s, early 80s. The feel of it.
Yeah.
But there is something to that where, like, anytime he's involved, it does give you that, like, the He-Man theme on Filmation. There's this.
Yes.
Now that you're associating it, you're just like, yeah, here he comes.
Right.
And that's something that I like about even that narrative, is just the idea, you don't know when he set off to do this. You don't know when Man-at-Arms and Zor showed up in the last the last episode, or the first side, I should say.
Yeah. And they say they raced all through the long night. So we've set up Castle Grayskull as far away. It's a little more grounded in reality than what Filmation would come, where they're able to zip around hemispheres, at the drop of a hat. They actually take the time here to go, no, this took him all night, and even Skeletor, in a minute here, you find out that they camped out last night because it was, too long of a journey. They had to rest up first. So, he's taking a little more practical. Again, that opening description of the forest is just awesome. Like, who no one writes stuff like that anymore. Like, you can just picture all these creatures in the dense forest, and everyone, the sun's coming up and the birds are stretching, and all of a sudden He-Man and Battle Cat just come racing through, running for their lives and the lives of the planet. Like,
it gives the urgency to it. And that's the thing. Like, I like that it's setting up the scene of, this is what he's fighting for. Like, there's a beauty to Eternia there. There's a peacefulness that he's fighting for, and they set it up there, and you're hearing, like, here's the daily way of how this would work, but it's done in such a literate way, and such a descriptive and beautiful way, that you're just sitting there going, I could sit here and listen to about the flowers. Like, like, he does that so well. The writer did that so well that it's like, I kind of wanted a couple more paragraphs. It made me kind of feel like I'm in a spa having a nice relax, I mean, and then when you get He-Man there, it's like, there's this, like, their urgency, and you're like, I'm snap back into it. Let's get this story going and stuff. And that's great. But I kind of dig that a lot. There is that placement of, you don't know what time it was when Man-at-Arms showed up. And now here it is. And you hear, he went through the whole night. So, like, there is that feeling of, like, man, he is on a mission, and it just, steamrolling right into the next thing. So,
Let's carry on.
Nearby, at Skeletor's campsite, everyone is still sleeping. Everyone, that is, except Panther, Skeletor's mammoth black cat. Perhaps it is a scent carried on the morning wind, or the sound of the rustling bushes that has awakened the cat's senses. The gigantic animal is anxious and paws at the ground nervously. He smells danger. Soon, Skeletor opens his wicked eyes with a start and looks around.
What is wrong, my good friend Panther? Do you smell or hear something that we cannot sense yet? Up, you lazy creatures. I have a feeling He-Man is drawing near. We must not let him catch us unprepared.
I know that was short, but there's a few things we got to address in that.
I have a feeling I know one of the things at least. Two of them, possibly.
But yeah, obviously this was probably written as they were getting ready to make Panther. So them going with a black color for him, I mean, I guess it makes sense. I'm assuming that they didn't actually get to see the toy. And when you're presented with, well, this is Skeletor's Panther, your mind's going to go black unless you know him. So, you know, I'm good with that. But Skeletor opened his wicked eyes. What eyes would those be?
I guess from the way I didn't know what I thought of when I was a kid, because I might have been the same way going, he's a skull. Like, how does that work? But the way that I kind of took that now as I've gotten older is it's almost like you have those moments on 2000X where his eyes, it'll be black in his eye sockets, and then all of a sudden the red starts growing. And that's kind of how I viewed it now, where it's like, okay, the red glows and it shows like, oh, he's awake, you know, or whatever. That didn't bother me. And the thing with Panther, like, yeah, Panthers on Earth are black and all that stuff. But the thing that I went to, even with how that is described, it's almost in the comics. When you see anybody with black hair, like Superman, for instance, or Wonder Woman, they always have, when they have highlights, the old comics, especially in the 80s and 70s and further back, they'd always give them blue to have like, here's highlight. And it's like, we can't make it, you know, like a certain other color, but it's blue. So I kind of viewed it as maybe the toy was like, well, if you put him in shadow, it would be black, but then the highlights would be purple or something. You know, I just kind of forgave it on that level to it. But
I didn't really. I just wanted to talk about it, and I kind of figured the same thing. I guess the biggest thing that this does here is that it shows that Skeletor does need rest. He does have to sleep, even being this demon. And I guess that's the thing. Here, he's more of a demon from another dimension. So, like, this is just normal for him. And his body still needs rest and everything. Whereas, once we get, like, especially 2000X Skeletor, like, he's pretty much a magical being at that point. He's kept alive by sorcery. So, at that point, I'd say, like, he doesn't need to eat or drink or, you know, sleep. Like, it just kind of the evolution of Skeletor over the years. But this one being the demon... Once again here, it took He-Man all night, and Skeletor needed to rest up during that night because it took him maybe even longer to get here from Snake Mountain, you know?
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, and that's it. Like you said, it's the evolution. I personally like the idea Skeletor doesn't rest. That to me is scary, because it's the idea if he could do whatever he wants anytime he wants, as long as his henchmen are ready to do it, versus this version, you know, well, if I don't get him between the hours of, say, 10 and 7, you know, like, I can at least have a nap myself as He-Man, you know, or whatever. And so, you know, on that level, there is this, well, I got a window, you know.
Skeletor takes a nap during the day because he wants to do a midnight raid on Grayskull. Like, where's Skeletor? Oh, he's sleeping. Don't wake him. He wants to get up at 10 p.m. and go get Castle Grayskull while He-Man's sleeping, you know.
Evelyn! I will be asleep between 2 and 5 if anyone wakes me.
Yeah, it's my dad when he used to have to do overnight installs for work. It was like, don't you dare wake me up. I've got to be up all night. So.
Yeah, exactly. So it's like that it is kind of like I don't know. For me, I always I guess even as a kid there was an element of he sleeps. But then with this, I was just like, all right, fine, he sleeps. He's a demon. It is what it is. But I'm still like the fact that evil doesn't sleep in my version of Skeletor. Mm-hmm. That for me is a lot more terrifying because you don't feel like you can ever rest if he's your villain.
No, and it gives him an edge. It's like, okay, he might not be as strong as He-Man, but like he's got all the time in the world.
Mm-hmm.
So
exactly.
So we'll play it a little longer this time, guys. We're not going to keep interrupting every minute. But here we go. On to Castle Grayskull.
Soon, Triclops, Beastman, and Evelyn were awake and preparing themselves for battle. As they donned their armor, Skeletor gazed down on Castle Grayskull. Even the gleaming light of the morning sun could not erase the dark and foreboding shadows that clung to the castle walls.
Awesome.
In the bright sunlight, Skeletor could appreciate the immense size of Castle Grayskull. Its towers reached skyward, and the mammoth stones around its base dwarfed even the huge trees of the forest. From deep within the castle walls, Skeletor thought he could hear a sound. Softly at first, but growing slowly louder. It was a voice. No, not one voice, but rather a chorus of voices speaking as one. The voices sounded anxious, as if they sensed that something dark and horrible was waiting outside the castle walls. The sound grew louder until it reverberated through the valley and rang with a fury in Skeletor's ears.
His ears?
I know that sound,
whispered Skeletor in a low and raspy voice.
It is the voice of the Council of Elders, keepers of the wisdom and power. Of course they are nervous. They know I am nearby, and that soon all that they possess will belong to me. So sing, you fools. Sing! This is the day I have dreamed of all my life. By sunset, I will be the master of Castle Grayskull.
Yes. Yes. Oh, I love it.
This is how it should be done. I'm sorry. It's just like looking at the box art on the original, this is exactly the way that I pictured the environment around there being. It just, you don't want to, like, that was a huge reason why I loved this line when I was a kid. It was like, there's all this crap that's spooky, scary, deadly out there in the darkness, and Grayskull is like the face of it. And that's basically what they did in this, and I love that aspect of it. And if you put anything where there's a little spookiness like that, ooh, even though it's like that's what people do when they have the generic ghost noises. But there's something
thought it was done really well here. Actually, yes. I think it's a level above the ooh, like the way they did like the and not to interrupt you too long here, but I like I love the Spirit of Castle Grayskull concept, and I think it can go hand in hand with the Sorceress, and I wish they would use it more often. And I never thought about it until this record book, but yes, that is how he should sound. Like he's not speaking with one voice, but this multitude of voices of all the people who have given their power into Grayskull. Like that is an awesome concept, and I want to see that again.
Exactly. And here's the thing that I just thought of. In the case of Skeletor, it's like an early warning device, or it's a defense mechanism Grayskull has built in, that you have the spirit being and trying to, it's like trying to give you that warning of don't come near this place for so many reasons. Right. And in my head, then I'm going, well, how was it like when Adam discovered Grayskull? And in my head, I'm thinking those voices were leading him there. Oh yeah, those were the ones. And it's like, imagine that story too. Imagine in this canon, Imagine the story of how Adam actually got to Grayskull and was given the power sword. You know, like that would have been amazing just to hear that too, because I could picture, you know, he would be there and they'd be making all those noises, but to him it was like, but I have to go here, you know, and then they would be like, you know, Adam, you know, you're needed or something, and they have that like spookiness, but it's like it's almost in service of them. They need him to come to them or whatever, and that would be freaking amazing to listen to that story.
Yeah, I mean, you've, you know, we've talked before about, you know, how Adam kind of just knows, like, when he first picks up the sword to, you know, by the power of Grayskull, and it's like, well, imagine if, like, all you hear those voices, ooh,
exactly.
Then, like, as he holds the sword, they're like whispering in his ear, like, by the power of Grayskull, like,
yes,
you know, so like they're leading him, you know.
That so. If they would have done that even in 2000X, that would have been enough for me to get chills and going like, thank you, because I never liked it. I know we talked about it in the beginning, and you're like, well, there's that moment where the energy shoots to him and all that. But for me, I'm like, I always liked the idea that the sorceress or someone else was the one coaching him to let him know what the deal was there, because he'd be this kid that didn't have a clue other than, I'm getting a sword. Okay. And so it like to have this version of it, and it's spooky. It's got this, like, everybody likes to make fun of, you know, well, that's where the good guy's headquarters is technically, you know, like that's where the good guy gets his power from. And this is one of those perfect examples of, this is why this is freaking cool, because you would associate that to, Skeletor should be living there. And I love that he wants to live there.
Right.
And then
but they don't want him.
It's such a great dichotomy. It's just, here's the good guys, but he's dealing with the spooky place, and the spooky guy wants it, but he's not getting it. And the whole thing of that, from when I was 3 or 4 learning about this, it never ever faded how awesome that is in this line. No, it's like the stuff that you think should go together, it's not, and that's why it's great. You know.
Absolutely. I completely agree. And like I said, the thing is, and that's the beauty, is that you can merge some of these aspects. Like that glow going up his arm when you first pick up sword in 2000X could be the spirit, you know, here. Sure. And you can work it all together, and that's beautiful. Real quick here, not tangent too much, but Skeletor's voice in this, it is so good, but at the same time, it is so generic evil guy. Like, I definitely prefer, honestly, at this point in my life, probably Brian Dobson probably did it the best, to be honest with you, even though Alan Oppenheimer will always hold a near and dear place in my heart for his portrayal. I really like this voice, but I'm not getting as much of a Skeletor from it, whereas it could be like any 80s villain, you know, but it is a really good bad guy voice. So I'm enjoying it, but
I like this one quite a lot. I like growing up with Oppenheimer, it's like, okay, that's the iconic one. And then Dobson was one where when I heard him for the first few times, I was like, you know, I like that there's an element of home to him using a little bit of that, but then he took it in a way where it's like, oh, he's cold-blooded though. Like he really made it menacing.
He made it his own.
Yes. And I feel like if you combined Dobson and you combined Frank Langella, this is the version you get, in a sense, because he has that I don't want to say stoicness, but he has that presence that Langella brought to it, where it was, you know, he would be commanding people and barking at them, you know, in that way. And I really like that compared to Oppenheimer. Like, everybody equates it to, oh, it's campy now. And it's like, I want the Skeletor to sound this way, and like Dobson and Langella a lot more. That's just, it makes your blood run cold when you hear them snapping orders or barking out things or whatever.
Absolutely. Well, let's hear what else he's going to get up to.
All right.
Skeletor and his friends made their way down the side of the rocky cliff toward the castle. The approach to the castle was hard. The path was old and clogged with thorny vines and bushes. Skeletor slashed at the underbrush with his sword and hacked his way onward. Soon, they reached the entrance to Castle Grayskull. They all gathered around the raised drawbridge, which was caked and crusty with age, and gazed up toward the parapets high above. The fortress seemed impenetrable.
I have not come this far, only to be stopped by a wall of stone. We must find a way inside this blasted castle.
Perhaps I can be of some small assistance to your royal wickedness.
Intoned Evelyn in a raspy, bird-like voice.
I, too, have many powers. Watch as I demonstrate my amazing skill.
Really pay attention to the music in this
Her
part.
bird-like eyes grew wild with excitement. She closed the cape over her head and grumbled a strange, unintelligible chant. A pale green mist began to form about her. Soon, she was glowing with a putrid light. A foul odor filled the air. When the fetid smoke cleared, Evelyn was gone. In her place, scratching at the ground, was a hideous vulture. It was Screech, the alter ego of Evelyn. The filthy bird had a plan. She would fly up to the top of the castle and see if she could gain entrance through one of the eye socket windows. With a dreadful screeching sound, the repulsive bird flapped its feathered wings and lurched skyward.
Now, is it just me, or when she was transforming, was that Filmation music?
I couldn't like hear that and go, yeah, it was, with everything going on with the rest of the audio in it. And I can't think of what that would have been originally.
Yeah. No, it sounded very close to me. It was that and I'm not good with singing. I mean, Sean knows. So, but like whenever they had like that creepy I think Tila, before she encounters the Shadow Beast in Tila's quest, it's got that kind of like creepy music leading up and kind of like that unknown music. Usually would have a wolf howl in it.
Okay, yeah.
And that's why I'm curious how close some of this stuff is intertwined. Because everything else is very much its own thing, but for some reason that and maybe it's just my ears, someone, correct me if I'm wrong. But yeah, that part just sounds so Filmation-y to me. Then the music, that it'd be nice to find out exactly how close some of these projects were coordinated with each other.
I figured you were gonna lead with, so Evelyn, huh? Or something.
Well, I'd heard about this. I don't think this is the only place she did this, because I had heard about it, unless it would just be because of this, Look that up right quick here, actually. Maybe I can find it here.
Yeah, I figured the voice, that would have been the thing that triggered it, because even now, hearing that voice, it's like, if you look at the figure,
bad voice, but
and that's the thing. Like, I don't think it's a bad voice. I'm a little lost at why they went that route with it. It's not what I would have expected. I mean, it's like Skeletor is definitely one of my favorites on this with the voice, just because he is much more grim sounding and much more vicious sounding compared to Oppenheimer and stuff. And He-Man has that, like, if anything, he reminds me of 2000X He-Man, because John Irwin and the way they wrote him never had that, like, well, foul demon kind of thing. And it's like, there was always that vibe. Like when Cam Clark would talk like He-Man, it would be like, well, Skeletor, and he'd do that whole thing. And it was very, there'd be, I don't want to say pompous, but there was this this, like I'm doing my hero moment kind of feel, and that's how it feels to listen to He-Man here. But yeah, for what we hear Man-at-Arms, Adam, He-Man, and Skeletor so far. It's like all those, okay, that's fine. That Evil Lyn is just like, huh? And it's very startling when you hear her.
Yeah, I mean it's a great voice for the peasant woman that's selling bread in the market, but yeah, for an evil sorceress.
Well,
and and for an evil sorceress that looks like Evil Lyn, like that's I mean, if she was like once again here, how much did they see, or did they just get like, oh, this is an evil witch? Okay, so they're picturing an old crusty white-haired lady, and not
exactly.
Evil Lyn. So
yeah, because that's like if I can't hear anybody other than like the Filmation or 2000X Evil Lyn, because there's no way that voice would be coming out of her mouth. It's like even Chakotay on the House of Chakotay, her voice kind of borders this in a certain way, because she had a very shrieky kind of vibe to that. But the one part that I think even as a kid it mesmerized me is her incantation. I love that. I can't understand the words, but you pick up enough of them to go, like when I was a kid, I was like, I bet this could do something if you knew what that meant. Like I bet if you said that, it would do something,
Right?
Because like even before, and I'll give the shout out here right now. Steve and Jeremy over at Podcasters, they were the ones that did this back in their early episodes, and like even before that, there was this, like I'd be listening to it when I was a kid and just going like, I that moment stuck in my head, and then when I listened to it on their show, I was like, oh my god, that moment still just it hits me every time, and it's like I love that incantation because it just sounds like it's ancient. It sounds like there's a history to those words, even though I'm sure they were like just mumble things, And,
that's not the only place that they also in the Golden Books, Evil Lyn was able to transform into Screech. So, so early on she was really set up to really be like the nemesis to the sorceress with them both. Once the sorceress came out of the scene, and then she could change into Zor, even though she can't hear. But then Evil Lyn could transform into Screech here. But then by the time Filmation came around, Evil Lyn and Screech were two separate things, and it's like, it's interesting. It's interesting all the lead ups and everything to where people took these same pieces and put them together in different ways. So
and I think when I was a kid, I really like that idea, but there's a tendency, like when you have a story told to you a certain way, you're like, well, that's how it should be done. And like when I was a kid, I loved all this stuff, and then once Filmation hit, then there was an element of, okay, well, He-Man doesn't need his axe and shield, and we're gonna just have it be this way, and Screech is its own thing, and like for me when I was a kid, it's like before Filmation, it was like, well, that makes sense. Why not? Let's try that and see what happens today or whatever. And I'm never gonna lie. I miss the fact that those Falcons and obviously Screech being a vulture and stuff. But I miss the fact that those things weren't huge in Filmation, like the freaking eagles from Lord of the Rings coming in, kind of birds instead, But it is what it is, I guess.
Nothing we can do now. Except carry on and see if Evil Lyn can get in through that window.
Let's do it.
Look, Battle Cat! Do you see what I see? There, by the castle tower. That ugly black bird is circling the parapet, trying to get inside. By the power of Zodak, I'm sure that is Evil Lyn, a companion of Skeletor. We must hurry. I just hope we are not too late to save the castle from this foul intruder.
He-Man and Battle Cat charged onward through the tall bushes. The giant cat leaped high in the air, covering enormous distances with a single bound. Soon, He-Man and Battle Cat arrived at a clearing right outside the castle.
Unholy heathens!
How dare you try and enter Castle Grayskull? Skeletor, you bony coward! Prepare to fight!
Well, if it isn't He-Man, the pure and puny. We have been expecting you, haven't we, my friends? How I have looked forward to this day. Finally, a chance to put your fabled strength to the test. You may be strong, He-Man, but you will find you are no match for the great Skeletor. You will perish just as sure as daylight is devoured by the night, time and time again.
Great line.
You are eloquent, my fiendish enemy. But you fail to understand the true nature of the universe. While it is true that nighttime devours the day, it is doubly true that every morning the sun returns to frighten away the cowardly darkness. Just like the darkness of midnight, you are doomed by time and fate, Skeletor. Darkness has no power here. Be gone!
We shall soon see who has the power in the universe. Enough talking. I grow impatient with your idle words. It is time to fight.
I would prefer not to engage in violence, but I see now that it is the only language you understand. So we will fight. By the power of Castle Grayskull!
I love that. I love them just sitting there trading insults back and forth, and not even like base insults. I mean, what was that like? You are eloquent, my fiendish enemy, but you fail to understand the true nature of the universe. Like
that part got me.
He-Man.
That whole experience was great, but when he got into that part of it, there was an element of, well, you see, Skeletor, if you actually look at the eternal equinox, and he's, there's like, he almost like broke it down into science, and it's like, yeah, I just scienced that, there's this vibe, but no, like I love that when he went eloquent, because my God, if there is anything that I could say as like one of the best positives, it's the eloquence of this entire thing. And it's, the way that Skeletor comes at him with his lines, and it's like I almost feel like Skeletor's got the upper hand in how well crafted his bravado is there, like I actually, I will, about how night takes over the daylight time and time again. It's like, he's kind of got a point,
He's not wrong.
He's not wrong.
He-Man was ready to fight from the get-go, and Skeletor's the one who started, started throwing the insults around and everything, so. Yeah, no, it's awesome. It's a great exchange between the two, really setting up how they're not only the strongest, but they are very smart, and just like they are like the alphas of the universe, good and evil. So let's get back into the battle.
Skeletor jumped up onto the mighty back of Panther and drew his sharp sword.
To battle, Panther! The enemy is upon us! Attack! Attack!
Battlecat roared into action. He reared up on his hind legs and let out a terrifying growl as the two arch-enemies charged across the stony ground toward conflict. He-Man had drawn the Sword of Power, and it gleamed in the dazzling sunlight. Soon, they were upon each other in battle. The clash and clatter of sword against sword rang out across the battlefield. Cyclops and Beastman stood by and watched in awe as the two giants fought furiously.
We're just gonna stand there and watch.
Down from the sky flew Screech. The savage vulture caught He-Man by surprise, and in an instant, knocked the Sword of Power from his hand. In a split second, He-Man was struck with a bolt of energy from the sword of Skeletor, and he crashed to the ground in a cloud of dust.
So, light always triumphs over darkness, does it? We shall soon see about that. You are defeated, He-Man. You are powerless without that sword.
And that's the end of the record, guys. I mean, yeah, He-Man got defeated. Skeletor wins, and that's it. I mean, hey, great record, right, Sean?
You'll see the rest in the 1987 Masters of the Universe movie.
Yes, yes.
That's pretty much where it's at now. There, like you were kind of giving jabs. It's like, well, they're just watching. It's like, there's a part of me that feels pretty rough for He-Man, because for Christ's sake, like Man-at-Arms was just there on the first side. You mean he couldn't come with him? Like he could have used a little backup here. Zor was tired, yes. But or he was like, well, He-Man, I go to bed around 9. Like, if you're gonna go all night to get the great, I need my beauty rest.
He's probably on his way now. He left around 7 in the morning, so he should be there early afternoon at the latest. But yeah, luckily for He-Man, Beastman and Triclops did just sit there. Otherwise, it could have been over even quicker, because that is how Evelyn skewed the battle in the favor of Skeletor there by getting the drop on He-Man. And I do find it interesting here, not to tangent too far, but so Adam is calling upon the power of Grayskull in this. He does have the power sword, but then like Skeletor saying that Castle Grayskull is like old and rusted shut, and like the path there is covered with thorns and bushes, and he's got to chop his way through. So even with Adam still transforming, it's still a very different world, as in he really doesn't go to Grayskull much besides to defend it. Like you don't get, you don't even get the feeling that there's a sorceress here or anything. It's kind of the mix of the two. He transforms to protect it, but it's still just a fortress sitting empty in the evergreen forest,
Yeah.
So that's a neat relationship.
It is, and there's things about this one that within its own continuity, I would have loved to see the beginning and even more to what happens after this, because there is, like you said, it looks like that the drawbridge hasn't been lowered in centuries. Probably it was all caked with ancient dust and all that they were saying, and the pathway is unclear, so Skeletor's hacking his way through it with the evil warriors. So it's like, okay, then in this version, was it that the sorceress met him in the cave, gave him the weaponry and and all that stuff there, and it was in the defense of Grayskull, and he's never even set foot in it, and it's the whole, he doesn't even want that power, it's more he's defending the power, and Skeletor just happens to always want the power or whatever, because that's an interesting take on the already established mini comics, but then seeing the story from there. So
exactly. No, it's a really great premise. So
and I love the details that they even said there, because it reminded me of Sleeping Beauty. The part where the prince is trying to he's using his sword to chop through all those thorns to get to the castle and everything, and there's that vibe from how this is worded, where that's how I'm seeing Skeletor and Triclops and everybody. They're cutting through all those thorns, and it only is adding to the more sinister nature of how Grayskull should be, and
you really gotta try. No one's just stumbling into Grayskull here. It's giving you every opportunity to back away, and you better take it.
Exactly, and that's kind of why I think Triclops and Beastman are the way they are during this fight. I think. They don't really mention those characters past here's the names of his henchmen here. But I almost feel like Beastman would probably be a superstitious individual, even though he's big and he looks like he'd take on an army, depending which version you have. And Triclops, if you're going Filmation Triclops, he would have been like, oh, I don't want to go in there, or something. So there's this, we're here in support of Skeletor, but we don't want nothing to do with this.
Let's see what kind of help He-Man can get. And I know they're talking about something, but I can't remember what it is. Hopefully they'll say it a few times for us.
He-Man lay on the ground, stunned and silent. Could this really be happening? Could he actually lose the battle to Skeletor? Then he heard the sound. Softly at first, like a ringing in his ears. Whispering voices. But what were they saying?
The vortex.
A what?
Vortex.
I'm sorry.
Say again.
Say it again.
On the verge of unconsciousness, He-Man strained to understand the voices.
What was it?
The time vortex. Right beside the castle wall. You cannot see it, but it is there. Believe us. Believe us. You must trip Skeletor into the vortex. It is your only chance.
What was it?
The vortex.
What? One more time. Sorry, I had to.
You did, didn't you?
He-Man staggered to his feet. He understood now. All across Eternia, there are time vortexes. Mostly they are concentrated in the sands of Time Desert. But here and there, all over the planet, there are these strange vacuums of empty space. Like tunnels through time, they lead back far into Eternia's history. Anyone who stumbles into one of these holes in time will tumble backward for endless centuries. He-Man knew now what he must do. Still reeling, he shouted to Skeletor.
I am down, but I am not defeated. If you want me, you will have to catch me.
With pleasure, He-Man. I love the hunt as much as the kill. Come, my friends. Join me on Panther. We will chase the cowardly He-Man for sport. What fun!
Alright. So Panther is a stud, first off.
Apparently.
He's going to carry everybody, all four of them. Even, and I'll give you Evelyn still in Screech form, so a little bit lighter, but, you know, that's still a hefty load.
Well, Panther's got to be like Battle Lion class then. If you go by 2000X, the cartoon, he must be like, here's a train that's coming at you if it's Panther, you know.
And I did want to apologize. I really do like the Spirit of Grayskull's voice in this, but just he says the vortex so many times. It's like you gotta just chuckle with it.
You do, but the one thing I was listening to this time around was the effects on that, and just the way it all sounds is enough that I'm like, I'm still good with it. Like, I know it's a lot, I know it's a huge amount, but there's an element of like, yeah, but I still like the sound effect of that voice. I feel like they should have done something other than say that. The other thing about that part that gets me is how many times they say it and how long it takes to get their message across. Yeah. It's mind-blowing to me that Skeletor hasn't run He-Man through while He-Man's going, wait, what? What's going on? And it's like Skeletor's just like looking at him going, are you going to fight or what? And he's like, wait. I got to hear something. Hang on. You know, it's like he's interrupting the fight. And then, you know, the other thing about it is the time vortex idea to me is actually scarier than the idea of quicksand. Yeah. Like, it sounds like you'd fall into quicksand. Oh, you disappear. Here it's like, I'm just picturing the typical Eternian. You know, there's some father that he's out there trying to farm his fields, and then out of nowhere he's gone because there's a time vortex on their property. And it's like, oh crap, you know, like that's one of those things where it's like, how do you mark this? How do you know where? I'm picturing it as there's nothing there, and then out of nowhere you're like centuries earlier and you're like, crap.
Again. Well, I will say they did at least, playing devil's advocate, they did at least say that the majority of them are in the sands of time, which is basically the deserted wasteland And it does seem like it's kind of rare for it to be here, the way they're talking. And this is what I was talking about. I love this voice. I love the way they did the spirit here with that echo and that you just the feeling of it. And I would take you one further and say maybe the spirit even slows down time, like kind of, like when he's talking to He-Man, like for Skeletor, it's like an instant. But like when they're talking to him, it kind of like they make their own time. Because that was cool how they kind of like slowed down and like He-Man's talking like this and Skeletor's like this, but then they come and we're talking and kind of I can't think of a good word for it, but kind of like they kind of like freeze time around so that they can have a second and be like, yo, dude, come on, look, right over there, see, vortex, cool, take a little breath, come on, pat the cheeks, let's go, wake up, we got stuff to do,
I would describe it as it would be Zack Snyder filmmaking, because that would be the moment where the slow-mo would kick in. Skeletor is on Panther with everybody, and you see it. Panther's coming, but its strides are getting slower.
And I blame you because you said Zach, but I'm gonna put it more as Zach Morris movie making here, where it's like, time out.
Exactly.
Wait a minute, guys. Mr. Belding may be onto something here.
I think Mr. Belding has it planned.
Yeah. That's how I picture it. That's what it is. Zach Morris talking to the audience, and then he steps back in. That's what I'm picturing there in my mind when the spirit's talking.
The worst thing you could have done to me right now is I'm picturing Zach Morris in a Zack Snyder movie now. So thank you very much for that, because the timeout turns into him killing everybody because he's just Zach Morris.
I'm
but it's
picturing
in slow motion.
Now I'm picturing Zach Morris in He-Man's harness with his furry underwear and boots. So
that would make Slater Skeletor, or would Screech be Skeletor?
I think Slater would have to be a Skeletor. Screech would probably be the spirit of Grayskull right now.
Zach!
Yeah. I'm pretty sure I'm pretty sure he appeared kind of like a ghostly spirit in at least one of the, maybe a dream sequence or something. I get this vague Saved by the Bell memory tickling the back of my head right now. But yes, I'm picturing Zach. You have to get him into the time vortex, and then like Mr. Belding is probably Beast Man. He's just standing there like, well, we'll see what happens.
Oh man, This is taking a wrong turn. That's all I know.
Or is it taking a right turn?
I was never the biggest Saved by the Bell guy, but just the idea of that, and it's like Zach was, he's got the blonde hair. I could actually see it. It's just like, this is just weird.
I'm gonna get a hold of some of these Photoshop guys we got in our community, and you're gonna see some stuff here.
Oh god, Lisa's evil in for Skeletor and all that.
Oh yeah, Kelly's Tila. Jesse would have to be the sorceress. I mean, it actually works really well. Really. Probably the one thing I would want to do is probably try and get Slater back on the good guy's side, like maybe Ram Man or something, or Fisto. Yeah, Slater is Fisto.
Slater is Fisto and Screech is Orko.
Yeah.
You'd have to have Screech be Orko, because he would be trying magic tricks all the time to impress. That would be the first like cross romance too, because Orko would be trying to impress Evelyn all the time, and Evelyn would be like, "Oh, leave me alone,"
Yeah.
It's
kind of hard because they Saved by the Bell didn't really have like recurring like villain type or like nemesis characters, so. I'd have to think on the evil side how you get them, and they'd probably have to be the teachers, right? Like,
that's the thing. Sense. I don't remember that show beyond those main characters anymore. It's been so long since I've sat through an episode. But and honestly, I will say I'm gonna put it out there. No, Jeremy, we didn't steal this either, because there is an episode of Podcasters where they cast Saved by the Bell using Masters, but it was for the bad guys.
Are you kidding me? They did.
This is a thing, and I'm like, oh dear God, we're like I could just hear Jeremy on the next episode going, I hate them. Like, that would be all he's just like, I will never plug you guys ever because you guys just keep stealing things from us. It's like, this didn't happen that way. It was very much unintentional.
But you know what? Every time he says he hates us, he is plugging us. So I will take it. Continue to hate us. We're going to be the bad boys of Masters of the Universe podcasts.
It's like, what are you talking about? Yeah, we're going to steal that.
Yeah.
What's in your lunch? Give me your lunch.
Tell you what, next week, we're gonna read Eye of the Storm, and we're gonna do voices.
I don't know.
Just kidding. That would be terrible.
My poor kids, if I tried to do the Steve Bisciotti elephant noise he makes for Snout Spout, I think my kids would be up till all hours of the night, scared to death of what's down in the basement at that point. So I think I'm gonna call it right there and just go Saved by the Bells as far as I'm gonna go into what they've already covered, and that was by accident.
That was a happy quit. I have not seen that. I'm jumping around catching up on podcasts. That one I have not come across. So.
Oh boy.
Let's get back to the action. Hopefully there's still some people watching. Here we go.
Beastman, Triclops, and the vulture Evelyn boarded Panther, and the monstrous cat charged after He-Man. He-Man darted back and forth, leaping high under rocks and behind thick bushes. He was amazingly agile of foot, and soon Panther was dizzy from the constant turning and spinning. Again, He-Man...
I picture Filmation He-Man there, like, leaping and jumping and everything, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Trick him over here into the vortex, but be careful. The vortex will capture you too if you misjudge the distance. Be brave, be brave. The entire planet is counting on your skill.
No pressure.
No pressure. No pressure.
He-Man staggered toward the spot where the vortex swirled invisibly. Once he was sure of the exact location, he stood a few feet in front of it and shouted tauntingly to Skeletor.
All right, you bag of bones. I'm tired of playing with you. I will tear you limb from limb with my bare hands. I await you. Come to me, you coward.
The threat infuriated Skeletor. He dug his heels deep into the flanks of Panther, and with all his helpers, he charged angrily toward He-Man.
You die, you fool. You die!
Yeah.
He-Man stood his
Didn't hear
ground
that on Filmation
courageously.
much.
Behind him, he could feel the time vortex swirling into infinity. One false move, and he would tumble backward into the past, and Skeletor would conquer all of Eternia. The mammoth black cat was almost upon him now. He could see the wild glow in Skeletor's eyes. Then, as quickly as a fox, he jumped to one side. Skeletor and his minions were unable to stop or turn. They crashed headfirst into the vortex.
By all the devils, what is happening?
He-Man looked on in wonder as right before his eyes, Skeletor, Panther, Evelyn, Triclops, and Beastman began to sparkle in the sunlight. They had fallen into the time vortex. Every molecule of their bodies was spinning madly off course and flickering on and off like a firefly. They were growing invisible.
Help us! Help us, please! Don't let us die!
You will not die, Skeletor. You have been trapped in a time vortex. It will carry you far away from here to another time far in the past. Perhaps, for a while, we here on Eternia will be safe from your tyranny. Farewell, Skeletor! Farewell!
You may have tricked me this time, but be warned. You have not seen the last of me. I will find my way out of this time trap and return to challenge you again, He-Man. Of that, may be sure. You have not seen the last of Skeletor. I will have revenge! Revenge! Revenge!
I know we're almost to the end, but I just want to talk about that right quick. You mentioned in the middle of that you wouldn't hear that in Filmation, that die,
Mm-hmm.
But other than that, like the whole ending is very Filmation-y. Like there's not, it's He-Man running and jumping and leaping, and at the end is basically just the Horde Prime takes a holiday, the ship rams into an asteroid, it's He-Man jumps out of the way and they slam into a time vortex, so.
Yeah. No, it has that flavor, and I'm not gonna defend it on that level, because it definitely does. And I think if there is something about this that I wish it would have gone in a different direction, it would be that ending. I kind of would have liked to see He-Man just have to take on everybody at that ending, and do something along those lines, rather than have, for lack of a better term, the cheat code that is the time vortex. Because that, to me, even now, I'm thinking of it and going like, that is still such a weird idea. In like, there's these portals and they're just there, but you're lucky if you don't find them, and so in that way, it's like, all right. And plus, if you didn't have that, you wouldn't have 5 minutes of this side of the record being about the vortex and all that. You could have a little more story to that part then.
No, I would have liked to see a little more. And the weird thing is, it's like Battle Cat he's just kind of vanished. They never really took him out. Like, He-Man got knocked off him, and then Battle Cat's, like, gone. That was weird. And it's like, why even bring along the other evil warriors? Because they really don't do anything besides stand there. Beastman and Cyclops. So, could have made it just Skeletor and Evil Lyn. But beyond that, the idea of the time vortex is kind of weird to me, too, because you say you're sending him to the past. Well, that sounds worse to me. Like, why would you want this evil guy in the past?
He could change the future.
Right. So.
Yeah.
It's
what's the episode? The Filmation one where he's got the disc and he's going to try to destroy the place where that's not the golden disc. The time corridor, where he's got the disc. It'll spin faster and faster and grow larger and larger and all that. And it's like, I'm picturing that being how the sequel to this would be then, if they made a sequel.
It's a weird way to get rid of him here, and that's been my biggest thing. It's like, why would you want to send him in the past? Like, that's the worst thing you can do. It's like, okay, we're gonna be free here, but like, the people 100 years before us, they're totally gonna die. Like, there's no one to protect
exactly.
them.
I mean, the if they had to do any kind of like a thing like they're talking about with the corridor, the best option, in my opinion, would have been then have something that sends them back to Infinita. Yeah, because that's where he comes from in this version. Have it like, okay, here's this vortex or whatever that will actually, it's a breach between Eternia, and it's a breach between there, and that's how he came, so they could shoot him back there instead. You know?
And then he can still come back, and I agree. So,
and the other thing too is it must be hellish to imagine your Beastman, your Triclops in this situation. You're like, I just came along for fun or whatever, because they're not obviously not participating. They're getting their participation trophies, and that's about it on this
riding
episode.
On Panther. That's the most they've done this whole time.
And then they turn into these sparkling versions of themselves getting thrown into this thing. It's like, imagine just being like, I don't want to deal with this like, I could just see them going like, I'm out. I'm done. Like, this is too much, dude.
That is neat voice effects and like just effects during that part too, where they're starting to disappear and Skeletor's voice gets echoey. I love that. I love that part of it, like the actual production. And I will say again, I'm doubling down on that the Spirit of Grayskull kind of stops time, because if you notice, like, all the music cuts out when he's talking. There's nothing going on behind him. It's like you got the fast action music and then like just nothing, and he talks. So I'm doubling down on that. That's what I'm sticking with. It makes it work in my head. So
and that whole sequence that's what to me would be hellish. Like, you're stuck in this thing and it's taking a while, but you know what's about to happen. That to me would be worse than, like, it's like, I know I'm caught in this thing. I want it to be over quick. And then you're having Skeletor have like a monologue that you're like, oh man, I pity these people right now. That's horrible. It's horrific.
Kind of like the black hole kind of effect, it's like it's kind of slowly sucking him in. So
yeah.
All right, let's go ahead and finish this on up. They are in the vortex. They are disappearing, and
the voice of Skeletor faded away to nothing, and then he was gone, lost in the swirling infinity of time. But He-Man knew better than to count his enemy out. If anyone could find his way back from the depths of history, it was the evil Skeletor. And if it wasn't Skeletor, it would be yet another foe. For there is always some selfish soul ready to take up the low road of tyranny. He-Man knew at that moment that the battle would never be truly over. In his heart, he knew that he would struggle all his life against the cowards and bullies who mistake gentleness and concern for weakness and fear. But if there were battles to be fought, he could think of no better cause. It was as old as time itself. All across the infinite universe, thousands of brave men and women were carrying on the struggle against tyranny. He was but one lone soldier in an army of heroes. Together, they were truly masters of the universe.
We are the masters of the universe.
We have to sit through this again.
We are the masters.
It's beautiful.
I actually get stuck in my head every time we do this now.
This has been stuck in my head for going on 40 years. I love the Lost in Space. Lost in time.
That just Skeletor.
This is the part where ABBA completely came in and overhauled the thing right here.
Oh, absolutely.
Dancing Queen.
I'm looking at the counter, people, and it can't be as long as the opening one, so we're at least looking there.
There are no apologies about this. It's beautiful.
We are the makers of our destiny.
I love it so much.
Till the universe is free. We are the masters of the universe. We are the masters.
Break it down, Sean.
Cabbage Patch.
If you're on the audio podcast, you got to head over to YouTube right now and just watch this last few minutes. Sean is breaking it down. He's got to throw his phone down in a minute. I'm calling him now. There it is. God, I really thought you were taking the phone that time.
Lady.
The victory shall be ours.
I missed it, my angle.
We are the masters of the universe.
I love it so much.
That is the 1983 Kid Stuff record. Wow. That is a story. That is an epic production. I applaud John Braden and everybody who was involved in it.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, I had some gripes. I had some complaints. I had some nerdy deals with it. But overall, it is an amazing record, good story, well produced. Yeah, it's just it was an action packed adventure. It's another introduction, but it ticks all the right boxes. The only thing I would say that it really probably needed to do was spend a little bit of time on the secondary characters. I mean, we didn't get Tila at all, even though she's on the cover. And then like Skeletor's lackeys were pretty much just there just so they could throw the names out there. That's probably my biggest complaint about it is that it wasn't a big battle with all the characters at that point.
Yeah. Yeah, this it's because I grew up with it. The nostalgia is so strong with this thing. I don't remember how many times I've listened to it when I was a kid, but I know I have walked around my apartment ever since. I've walked around throughout my life, and I'd start going, and I'm like, that's the He-Man record again, and it once you hear it, it's a part of you after that. And you're like, oh, wait, do we have to listen to this? Yes, because everybody should listen to it. Yeah. But yeah, I agree. Like the time vortex thing is still one of those like, okay, like I'm not a huge fan of how the resolution happened in this compared to other things. The way they wrote this, I would have rather seen them just go head to head and just duke it out and really get have them on the ground just punching the crap out of each other and stuff, because He-Man's not letting them through that drawbridge. And unfortunately we didn't get that, but the descriptiveness, the narration, the writing, the voice acting for the parts that they used, with the exception of Evil Lynn not being that, but the actual way that she does that incantation still works for me. There's a lot that's on point, and there's a lot that is the era that I love the most in here, but you finally get it in a way where it's not just you're reading a mini comic. And that's part of why I love this thing so much, I think.
Yeah, no, I agree. It's a great, and I don't even have the nostalgia. Like I found out about this, I mean, really got into it within these past 6 months, since we've been doing the show, and I'm sure I've heard of it. I know I've seen it in, years past, but I mean, as far as actually like sitting down listening to it, that was January, December at the earliest. Like it's so, and it hits all the right buttons. It's a neat little time capsule here of like what was going on at this time, and it's just another like what if. It's another brand trying to come up with their origin or their story for He-Man, as Mattel's trying to figure out what they're doing. So it's an important part of history. And I thoroughly enjoyed it. Once you get past if they just made that opening song shorter, like seriously, it's like 8 minutes long. Like that's just too long. This end one was nice. That was a good length there. It was like 2 minutes. It's like okay, good. You know what? I'm feeling good tonight. That was fun. I'm gonna go an 8 out of 10 on this.
Okay. Yeah, I can't fault you. I can't fault you on the opening song. I'm not gonna say that I agree 100% because I love it, but I won't fault anybody who feels that that's too long, because once you get into it going a second time, I remember when I was a kid going, is this going to start, or is this all I get? And then I just have to look at the cover of this record, like it was very like, they're saying the same. It's not like a second verse. They're just repeating themselves again. I mean, like I said, the little elements that I'm not overly thrilled with are far eclipsed by the stuff that's amazing about this. And it's a great capturing of, this is when they were trying to find their footing. And that's kind of why I love that element of it. I like when things aren't so, you're not immersed in the mythology yet. And there's so many options in that way. And that's what this is. So 9 out of 10. There's no way around it for me. The nostalgia is just so strong. And the little tiny bits, like I wish he would say, by the power of Grayskull, I have the power. and he doesn't. We're still in the beginning of that and everything. But imagine that, and then having all the other stuff. It's like it would feel like home almost by that point. You know?
Yeah.
So yeah, 9 out of 10.
Nice. So that's the record. We've done it. All right. Wow. I'm so that whole record just got me so pumped. I'm just like, well, where do we go from here? I want to go fight evil now. So,
you got to have that theme song.
Yeah. So Sean, do we have anything to wrap up with here?
Yeah, we do. So, in the last couple days, Matt and I have been talking, and we're adding a little something extra to the show starting next week.
We're not. I do want to say I don't want to reveal the title yet. I'm going to wait until it's ready. So
okay, but so this is us kind of finding our footing and what's our voice when it comes to a lot of this stuff, because we like talking about the literature, we like talking about the stories, and what we're going to do is take a look at some of the Masters of the Universe stories out there, and if they are not fan favorites, or if we feel they aren't as fleshed out, I guess, or as interesting or as action packed or whatever as they could be, we're gonna start throwing our own ideas at the wall and seeing what works. And eventually, as fans, feel free to throw things at us to go, hey, what about this episode, what about this story, and we can have a little fun with that too. So starting next episode, it's a new feature,
and we should have a little teaser for you before the next episode airs, depending on Sean's schedule. But yeah, and specifically, this is the bad stuff. Like this is the stuff that people ridicule or dismiss, stuff like that. Is this new feature is really gonna focus on that kind of stuff? I'm just gonna throw it out there. The Island is high on my list. Greatest show on Eternia. That'll wind up on there. Was that Monster on the Mountain? Like that. Leech, the master of power suction unleashed. That's the kind of stuff we're talking about here. That we're really going to be focusing on in this new segment. So I think it's going to be a lot of fun.
One of the things that when we started coming up with the idea of doing the podcast, and Matt actually said it, I'm like, okay, cool, was we don't need to review everything, because there are definitely some things that we just know we're going to be like, this is just not working for us or whatever, and the whole episode will be just us tearing something apart, and that's not what we're trying to do here. So this is us having some fun with an established thing and going, we're not paid to do this. We're just having a little fun and spitballing. Here's how it could have been better, or here's how it could have been more interesting, or whatever. So that's going to be fun for us, because we are the ones that want to talk the stories, the writing, the mythology. I mean, that's the intro every episode, the mythology and all that, So that's our sweet spot.
We love spinning story ideas. We do it all the time behind the scenes.
Oh yeah.
We just throw concepts back and forth to each other all day long. So it'll be fun.
Facebook Messenger is littered with it, man. So, and anything beyond that, I'll just, once again, I got to do it because I love those guys. Steve and Jeremy, first off, thank you with those episodes, because those reminded me that this was a thing in my childhood, that it's like I didn't hate it. I just forgot it was there with all the living I've had since that time in my life. But yeah, Jeremy, don't give me crap about the Saved by the Bell. That was just something that just flew out of nowhere tonight. So those guys, they're going to have it in for us if we meet them at PowerCon one day. They're going to be like, you steal everything. So.
Yes. I'll bring my battle axe. You bring your power sword.
Oh, it'll be interesting.
Eternian Fight Club.
So yes. We aren't supposed to talk about that.
Oh, that's right.
Nobody talks about first rule of Eternian Fight Club.
That.
First rule of Eternian Fight Club: don't invite Orko.
I will echo your sentiments there. Thank you, Steve and Jeremy. It's been a blast catching up on the shows I have. And it was nice to finally get me over the hump to really sit down and look at this. And I will say, guys, give Sean all the crap you want. It's all his fault. He made me do it. And I am going to include a link down below to Podcasters of the Universe. So go check them out. Give them a little love. Another great show. I got links down there to Danielle's videos there for her wish list series. And check out Battle Ram blog. That's another one I'm gonna put down there. He has a nice transcript. He actually wrote out the transcript for this record book, so you can check that out. And that's where I got the information about John Braden from, because that's the most information I could find anywhere. And he's got a lot of great articles over there. If you haven't checked that out ever, he goes into the history, mystery, and the origins really deep. He'll pull up concept art and like kind of the evolution of the ideas up to final product. And his name escapes me off the top of my head, which bugs me.
It's Adam. I know his first name's Adam. I can't think of what his last name is, but I remembered that it was the whole, hey, look, it's a website run by a guy named Adam, and it's Masters of the Universe. I feel bad that I don't remember his last name, though, unfortunately.
Yeah. But check it out, battleramblog.com. There's a link down below. Check all those guys out. Check out our Facebook page. Give us a thumbs up. Give us a review on iTunes, because Penny's going to tear us apart for this one. So help bolster us up before that. Go ahead, do the like, do the share, subscribe if you could, because that'd be great. And yeah. Anything else, Sean?
I'm good at this point. So,
right. So we'll just leave it at until next time.
Until next time.